Hello everybody and welcome to this video of myself and Simon Bates.
Hello.
And Simon, we're going to have a look at 3 of the custom Yamaha crooks or necks, depending on your flavour, shall we say. So there's 3 models that they're now focusing on, and there's the C1, the E1 and the V1. Okay, so big question obviously is, well, what's the difference? And it's all to do with the taper size through the actual neck. So when we start with the C1, it has a very narrow taper, which means it doesn't basically change a great deal. It's a slower, narrower taper. The E1 is in the middle, it opens up a little, and the V1 is the widest taper of the 3. So commonly, the wider the taper, the bigger, brasher, broader the sound, but the harder it is to keep everything in check, sometimes from an intonation point of view. But let's have a blow through them and see what you think, Simon, from a playing point of view. So this is the C1, and actually we should point out, shouldn't we, Simon, that's your 875.
This is my 875, yes.
Tenor, and we're using a Mayer mouthpiece. So yeah, let's have a go with the C1.
This is alto, though.
Oh, did I say tenor?
You did.
Okay. It's an alto. Good job, I know what I'm talking about. All right, let's have a try and see what we think. Okay, so just impressions, that is the C1, how does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I use a V1 normally, and this feels a bit restrained to me. But it's got a good centred sound. It's really easy to control. So, yeah, that's not a negative thing at all. It's a very personal preference. I think the best thing you can do is try a selection of these because, you know, I've got a loud, big, bright sound. That's what I want. But perhaps if you were playing more classical type stuff, this would be a much better crook to use.
Yeah, Simon's right. It does very much depend on what you actually want and whether you like a bit more resistance or a bit less resistance and how much resistance you've already got built in your mouthpiece and your reed and everything else. But let's just carry on with the comparison and we'll try the E1, which is the middle one, shall we say. Interestingly, they are available in different finishes, both in terms of silver plate, gold plate, and solid silver. And we've done a separate video about how the finishes can affect it within one model. But for now, let's just carry on actually comparing the 3. This is the E1.
Yeah, so immediately it's brighter, got a bigger sound, and more free blowing. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's where we would probably expect it to be. Perhaps for someone who's doing a bit of everything, maybe you want still some core sound, you know, still something fairly solid in the middle that you can hold on to, which if you're playing in a section can be quite useful. But you want maybe it to feel a little bit more open than the C1, which is a bit more centred and constrained, like Simon says. Cool, okay. Well, let's give the V1 a try. Now, the V1 is the model that comes with the 82Z Yamaha saxophone, which is their popular jazz. I mean, we call it jazz. You can kind of do what you want, but it's more towards the vibrant, lively, commercial end of playing. And this is the neck that Simon's used to, so there's going to be an element of you already being comfortable.
There is, yeah.
But let's have a listen and see what we hear. So yeah, first things, I mean, I know I feel sat next to you, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, it's louder, it's brighter. For me, this is what I want. That's the sort of sound I'm after. And I'm really delighted with the V1. I think it's a great neck. Perhaps the drawback with this is you have to work a little bit harder on intonation. But, you know, I come from the old school of the Mark VI, you know, Mark VI mentality where you have to work hard anyway. So that, you know, I don't think I really notice it when I'm playing. You know, you get used to anything.
Yeah, I think the takeaway from that on the intonation point of view is if you're a very experienced player who's comfortable and understands that the saxophone by its very nature needs a lot of manipulation to keep everything in check, and there's certain areas of an instrument which are broader tuning-wise than others, then you will be comfortable on a V1 and you'll manage it. I think if you're still quite early on, putting a V1 on could feel like, oh wow, I've got this big sound. But if you went and sat in a section and you weren't on top of keeping it in check with what you're doing with your embouchure, you might find you're having tuning issues. And that is not because there's something wrong with the saxophone or the neck, but it's when you open it up, as Simon's just said.
Of course, yeah. This is a difficult neck to use to play second alto.
Yes.
You need to be sitting lead.
Yeah. Or even playing in a pop band or, whatever, where you're willing to give it some go. But that's just worth thinking about because there's always a kind of payoff for things. So they're available on alto and tenor, and they are available in different finishes. And like I say, we've done a separate video about that. I think it's interesting because when we think about changing our sound, a lot of us might change the mouthpiece. But actually, if you've got a mouthpiece you quite like and a reed setup, but you still want to vary something, changing the neck can be quite a nice way just to change it up.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I've been using the same mouthpieces now since the 90s. But yeah, changed my instruments quite frequently and also have changed features on the saxophone like the neck screw, but also the neck. The V1 I use is quite a new one. So,
so if you are thinking of, how do you upgrade your sound or how do you just change it slightly, but you are comfortable already mouthpiece, like I say, then changing the neck is not a bad idea. They will fit on all of Yamaha models above the 480. So the 480 to 62, the 82, the 875. A lot of people ask, will they fit on other things? They might, but it's something you have to be careful of with an intonation point of view because they're designed to work on the Yamaha tube in terms of the scale. And depending on the size internally, that might vary on another brand and it might give you different tuning challenges. So my personal opinion is I would stick with them on the Yamaha. That's probably the best bet.
Of course, yeah.
Quick little story actually about the V1. That was designed for the new 82Z, which came out, and the metal resonators and other things they've done on the 82Z. But we were very lucky. We had some of the Japanese people from Yamaha come and we got a load of players into the shop. This was 5-6 years ago. And actually, I'll always remember it because I was helping organise, but we had 8 players, I think, and they all had to go into separate testing rooms and they were getting prototypes and all the rest of it. And all 8 came out and said they preferred the V1 of the 3 prototypes that they were given. And that wasn't V1 versus E1 and C1, it was V1 versus a couple of different prototypes. So I think they've really cracked it if you're an advanced player and you want some more volume.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to disagree because that's what I use. I think it's a great neck. They're great horns. So, if you can change your sound to exactly what you want by just putting a neck on, then, it's win-win.
Yeah. And if you do want something a bit more restrained, a bit more centred, then the E1 and C1 are definitely worth a look as well. It does depend what you want. But maybe give us a little bit more Simon on that as the V1 just to play us out.